Breaking news. New information has been leaked about a NATO plan to bring World War III even closer to its nuclear conclusion. Now, when I first heard about this information, I had to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, and I did some fact-checking and cross-referencing because this has to be one of the most inane and vacuous plans hatched by our leadership in some time. As it turns out, this is from a credible Russian media source. I know for some people that's oxymoron, credible Russian source. But based on the track record of our own government and our own media agencies for the last 4 years, I think it's incumbent upon us to, in the very least, consider these alternative viewpoints and take them with a heaping grain of salt. So I'm going to detail that for you today, and we're going to talk all about nuclear news on the front, things you are absolutely not going to hear anywhere else. Let's get to it. Now, according to Sputnik and RIA Novosti, two of the biggest Russian media agencies out there in Russia, they claim that a new plan, a British plan, which involves sending a NATO expeditionary corps into Ukraine this year, as well as installing a no-fly zone over western Ukraine or anything west of the Dnieper River, undermining Russia's offensive capabilities. So don't worry, this is strictly defensive. You have nothing to worry about. We're the good guys. And if you're wondering, this is a new Russian submarine that was just unveiled, a nuclear-powered submarine armed with Beluga intercontinental ballistic missiles that, of course, will be nuclear-tipped. Russia is upgrading its nuclear triad. I figured it was a good background for this video. Now, UK hopes that this scenario is going to be completely planned by May of 2024. I don't know if they actually think it's going to be implemented by that time period. That is fast tracking, which is very concerning if true. It is planned to secretly transfer to Ukraine large, highly maneuverable NATO forces from the border areas of Romania and Poland to occupy defensive lines on the right bank of the Dnieper River. That's basically anything west of the Dnieper, from Kherson all the way to Kiev. A preventative strike by the armed forces of Moldova and Romania against Transnistria is also not ruled out. I don't have the map up today, but Transnistria is a Russian exclave, more or less, not officially, but it's a very pro-Russian exclave that borders Moldova and is sandwiched in between Moldova and Ukraine. In addition, it also is home to one of the largest supplies of Soviet-era weapons that exists on the European continent. So both the Russians and the Ukrainians, who are both starved of artillery shells right now, would no doubt love to get their hands on that. Now, in order to overstretch the forces and fix Russian forces in place, the other strategic maneuver that they're going to do here is to deploy more forces to Finland and Norway, as well as a contingent of NATO forces and the armies of selected members of the bloc to these regions in order to fix Russian forces in place. So they're going to continue to send more troops into the Baltic countries, into Finland, to force Russia to keep a large troop presence in those regions. At the same time, and as we're going to talk about today, this has continued in the last 24 hours, strategic infrastructural facilities in Russia's northern regions might be attacked. They are currently being attacked as we speak. After that, according to the British plan, NATO forces would create a buffer zone within the occupied positions, including the border with Belarus and the territory around Kiev, and the released forces of the Ukrainian army would withdraw to the Special Operation Zone. This is their plan. They're planning to directly enter into Ukraine and engage the Russians in head-to-head combat. What could possibly go wrong? We know that in Romania, they are fast-tracking the construction of a corridor which stretches from the south of that country all the way up to Moldova. It looks as though this is going to be a military logistical corridor, but I guess time will tell. Speaking of Romania and every other country in Europe, they are preparing to go to war with the Russians. Get a load of this. The chief of the General Staff of Romania called for preparations for war with Vladimir Putin. Vlad Georgietta, I don't know, I'm probably mispronouncing that, advocated voluntary basic training for men and women under 35, according to Politico. So it's Western media, so you can believe it now, for all you skeptics out there. He also proposed legal reform so that Romania could legally shoot down Russian drones, because recall, there's been many drones that have been targeting these facilities on the Dnieper River, and some of them accidentally fall into Romanian territory. So the Romanians want to start shooting these things down, and of course, there's a gray area there because they run the risk of miscalculating and shooting something down over Ukraine. Now, just recall that in the last month alone, to put in perspective, the following countries at some level of government, be it their defense minister, their actual leadership, the commanders of their military, have talked about installing mandatory service, advising their nations to prepare, advising their constituents to start to make their own preparedness measures. And this is not including the actual, one of the Joint Chiefs of Staff of NATO, Rob Bauer, who advised people that they need to prepare for World War III. The following countries, the UK, Norway, Finland, Germany, Romania, Poland, the Baltics, Czechoslovakia, the Czech Republic, Sweden, are all openly now talking about war preparations with the Russians in just the past month. So don't underestimate the haste in which our leadership is going to create a crisis that is going to involve NATO engaging directly with Russia, quite possibly this year. This is one of the most critical years. I believe there are something like 60 nations that are doing, like major nations that are doing elections this year. If the number is not even more than that, all of the big players are having elections this year or have recently had elections in the past year. In addition to this, Latvia is becoming a new outpost for NATO aircraft, specifically the Luftwaffe. Some time ago, the Latvian Ministry of Defense informed that German troops and aviation would arrive at the air base in Livarde or Ogre region on March 1st of 2024, which would carry out the mission of a rotational basis for 9 months. The Luftwaffe Bundeswehr aircraft will begin conducting test flights and patrolling the airspace of the Baltic countries at that time. So you're going to have German warplanes flying along the border with Russia. I thought that having German tanks coming over the horizon fighting Russian tanks, I thought that was going to be the red line. If this isn't the red line, I don't know what is going to be the red line. What you're seeing behind me is a Russian nuclear submarine, Prince Pozharsky. It's the 5th submarine of Project 955A. They're going to be building 8 of these Borai A-class submarines, very large submarines. 4th generation nuclear submarines will form the basis of Russia's naval strategic forces for the coming decades. Nuclear submarines of this type are armed with Beluga intercontinental ballistic missiles. Now, we also have a situation in Ukraine, which is strange to say the least, but apparently they are building bunkers throughout their school system, and they're saying that these are for school children, okay? Now, we're going to talk about maybe why they're actually not for the purpose of school children. These anti-radiation shelters, the construction of which for educational institution continues. Work is underway on the construction of a civil protection structure in Uzin in the Belotservovsky district. Close enough. It should be noted that before the start of the Russian Northern Military District on Ukrainian territory, the population was less than 12,000 people, but there is a strategic military airfield near the city that this is being constructed, what you're seeing behind me here. And apparently, according to this Russian media source, Ukrainian military utilizes these types of schools, foreign mercenaries and militants, as well as nationalist formations. They live there and set up shooting ranges in the gyms. Now, I don't know if that's true. Of course, we're seeing that in a lot of modern warfare with Hamas utilizing certain facilities for their human shield utility. So, Ukraine is building these underground nuclear fallout shelters throughout the country. If that's not to be concerning, I don't know what is. Now, the UK is about to do a nuclear missile test in the coming days. They are going to be doing a test from the nuclear sub HMS Vanguard. This will be the first test of a Trident II missile since 2016. So the timing, of course, is quite concerning to a lot of people. We have the U.S. deploying Illinois National Guard soldiers, 300 of which, to the Middle East. Now, yesterday, I read a email that I received to you guys about somebody who is in a National Guard from an undisclosed state who is saying that they are training for a world war, and that the training that they're doing involves trench warfare, surf training, CBRN training, that sort of thing, and that they are told that they have to be on standby and ready to deploy within 30 days. Now, in that video yesterday, I said I wasn't aware that National Guard soldiers were able to deploy overseas. The United States has approximately 450,000 National Guard soldiers, I do believe. And apparently it was brought to my attention that, yes, indeed, they can. So it's no surprise then that this is happening right now. These guys are deploying to the Middle East, to some base in the Middle East. And so that's concerning, because as per that email that I received yesterday, he is claiming that they are going to be digging and establishing trenches at a training post there. Why would you need to, what could you possibly be engaging in trench warfare for, or training trench warfare for, other than a war with a peer adversary, right? But anyways, so that's concerning. We also have an attack on a Russian oil refinery. Where was this one now? Let me see if I can find the information about this one. This was it was a major oil refinery that was hit. I got so many notes here, guys, trying to keep all the balls in the air here. But either way, these attacks on Russia's critical infrastructure continue. It is starting to really affect Russia's bottom line. And it's only a matter of time before Russia is forced to respond in some unconventional way. So I don't have the actual details of this particular strike, but scenes like this are becoming all too common. And it's just one of those things that's bringing us even closer. They're going to continue to do these attacks on Russia's infrastructure. They're going to continue to move their forces closer and closer to the front, which is going to bring us that much closer to engaging directly with the Russians, and that's when all hell is about to break loose. Now, the Russians are preparing for World War III by disconnecting themselves from the internet. Hundreds of websites, mobile applications, and services in the .ru zone were down a few days ago, and they were unable to open for users for several hours. Now, according to the Net Freedoms Project, they claim that Russian authorities have long warned that they would try to move all users in the country over to a national DNS server. That's a national domain name service server, so like .ru as opposed to .com, where you're beholden to the United States and ICANN, and conclude that this is what's likely happening right now. The stated reason is that Russia wants to mitigate the threat of being disconnected from the domain name service. So they want their own great Chinese firewall of sorts. We might have to get our cybersecurity expert back once again to explain in more detail exactly why the Russians are doing this and how it works. But this is one of those things that you would see in the run-up to World War III. Russia wants to be fully self-sufficient, which is why they have their own GPS GLONASS network, which is why they want to now be disconnected and have their own intranet of sorts, which is not beholden to the Americans. According to Victoria Nuland, Putin is going to receive some pleasant surprises this year. They are planning on giving Ukraine some, what are they called, guided, laser-guided gravity bombs or something like that. And apparently this is going to be the next big game changer. The EU has already approved another $50 billion to Ukraine. Okay, so we know that the weapons are going to continue to flood in. We know that a top Russian general was killed in Crimea as of recent, a top Russian Air Force general on the territory of Crimea, okay, and any strike on Crimea is likely utilizing NATO ISR. So again, just another level of escalation in the conflict. According to Budanov, who is the Ukrainian intelligence director, he is claiming that they're going to be launching a new offensive in spring. And if history is any measure, we can presume that if they're saying this spring, they probably mean next spring. Because recall, the great Ukrainian counteroffensive was supposed to start many seasons before it actually did. It was supposed to be like a fall counteroffensive, and then it turned into the following summer counteroffensive. Either way, a lot of people are suspecting that Zaluzny, the current commander of the Ukrainian forces, is on his way out. They might install someone like Budanov, who is more willing to partake in more Machiavellian tactics and provocations in order to bring NATO closer to the conflict and potentially playing ball with some of the UK's nutty ideas in terms of implementing them in the militarized zone. Russia is also ready to expand the demilitarized zone as well. Now, according to Newsweek, as we claimed last week, Russia is using GPS jamming to prepare for war. So Russia is disrupting satellite systems in the Baltic region in preparation for a potential conflict with NATO. The commander of the defense forces, who's currently involved in this Steadfast Noon exercise that involves nearly 100,000 NATO troops based out of Poland, is saying that navigation is not working on the eastern flank, all the way from Finland to Poland as a result of this GPS jamming that is currently taking place in Kaliningrad. So that is something worth noting for sure. Russia is also going to be cutting its gas exports. So gasoline exports fell by 37% in January and diesel exports by 23%. A lot of this is due to successful Ukrainian drone attacks on major oil refineries and gas installations. Okay, so this is starting to take its toll, undoubtedly, and it's only a matter of time before Russia is forced to resort to more asymmetrical means. How they haven't done that yet is besides me, but they haven't. This attack, I finally found the information here. It's in Volgograd. Drones attacked the Lukoil's largest refinery in the Southern Federal District with a capacity of 14.8 million tons. Okay, this is a fire that covered more than 3,230 square feet, which is big when you're talking about fuel, and it's 570 miles from Ukraine, so 914 kilometers, meaning that Ukraine is utilizing its more sophisticated drones to get in that far and possibly leveraging NATO guidance systems. Now, there are some predictions that we're going to see inflation increase this year. And this is why I encourage people, if you do perceive there to be a bit of a supply glut in the markets where, you know, there's having sales right now on certain things, capitalize on those sales while you can, because we're just but one black swan event away from causing another kink in the global supply chain that is going to bring everything to a grinding halt. Despite the 2023 reduction in inflation, experts are predicting a potential increase in inflation in 2024. And the key reason for this expectation is the initiation of a new cycle of increasing budget deficits, which was observed in numerous countries. The author of this information warns that it could lead to hyperinflation and that the resurgence of inflation is seen as a sign that countries are preparing for a significant war. I'm not going to go into any more details than that, but just know that inflation is expected to rise. Gold buying by central banks is still at an all-time high. We also have Israel apparently moving 3 divisions to the Lebanon border. Some people are saying that that war is going to start in March or April, and Hezbollah is putting all its units on high alert for a possible war with Israel. In terms of the strikes that are still ongoing and progressing in the Middle East, according to a senior White House official, they claim that they are just getting started. What you saw last night and what you're going to see again was not insignificant. When you hit 85 targets over 30 minutes, that sends a strong signal about the capabilities we have. There are other things we're going to do. Some you will see and some you won't see. Now, Israel is expected to quite possibly get another $17 billion, a standalone bill for Israeli funding. So they've separated it from Ukraine. Is that called throwing Ukraine under the bus? I don't know. But it definitely speaks to the bilateral commitment to Israel within Washington, no doubt. Now, certain members of the Russian Duma are floating the idea of placing nukes in other countries, but the Russian government has rejected the idea that they have any plans on putting nuclear weapons in any other countries. But according to Alexei Zhuravlov, the deputy chairman of the State Duma Committee on Defense of the terrorist country of Russia, so you know that this is from a Ukrainian source, right? They want to put nuclear missiles or consider putting nuclear missiles in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua with launchers. Okay, so I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but you never know. North Korea continues to test cruise missiles with what they're calling super large warheads, super big, mega large warheads. Pyongyang says that it tested cruise missiles fitted with super large warheads, along with a new type of anti-aircraft missile as a part of its war preparedness that is worried its neighbors, South Korea and the United States, of a possible nuclear conflict. This came a day after the South Korean military detected the North launching multiple cruise missiles into the waters off its western coast. So things are heating up on that front as well. Needless to say, the time has come for you to prepare. I would encourage you to go check out one of the best preparedness and survival websites on the internet. That's CanadianPreparedness.com. The great thing about having my own vetted survival and preparedness store where we ship everything direct, this is not one of those rackets that involves drop shipping or anything like that. Everything ships out of our warehouse here in Canada. There's a few items that we drop ship, but we have thousands of products, all the highest quality food, the highest quality knives from the best manufacturers, axes, appliances, preparedness appliances, just the whole 9 yards. And we continue to expand the operation as much as we can. We also have some exclusive relationships with companies like that you just seen there, Silky. We're going to be unveiling some pretty big products from them this year that are most definitely going to revolutionize the outdoor wilderness and survival space as far as tools go. So if it's the world's warmest jackets you need, if it's the best snowshoes, Norwegian tents, Russian tents, we don't discriminate. We have it all there. And it's just been one of my life's goals to have everything in one place for people, especially exclusive items like these real fur mitts and hats that you're not going to find anywhere else. There's a lot of knockoffs out there. And just get all your heating needs, even though, it's been a very slow season. And this is what we're looking at here in North America for the coming days and weeks ahead. Just earth-shattering warm temperatures all around. And yesterday, I believe we hit minus 20 or plus 21 in part of our province, in the southern part of our province here, which is just completely unheard of. We get Chinooks every once in a while, but nothing that extreme nor this persistent. In terms of the Great Lakes ice coverage, it's not even, to say that it's at an all-time low is at an understatement. We're basically right here, okay? And the projections are that these warm conditions are going to persist throughout February. For the most part, we're going to have some brief dips into colder weather, but on the whole, we're just seeing record-shattering warm temperatures across the board. Now, according to some sources, the next step is going to be to target Iran's nuclear facilities. Perhaps I'll do a more deeper dive with respect to that. California is getting some heavy rain, recall we did this video on sandbags, and I would encourage people to just get sandbags, okay? Because sandbags are just incredibly useful for so many things in preparedness, whether it's fortifications, whether it's flood protection. They just have so many uses, and it's a cheap investment, and just to have them just in case is a good idea, okay? You can store them away and you don't have to worry about it. Go and check out our flagship video that we released a few other days. It's talking about, you know, why I believe it's so important to prepare, why people don't prepare. Sure enough, it's not getting any love from the algorithm. You know, the funny thing is, this is not a didactic video. I don't have any ulterior motives. I know it comes off as maybe like a PragerU type thing where they're telling you something, but they're injecting some secret political or economic motive in there. This is exactly what it seems. It's basically my own area of personal interest when it comes to looking at why people prepare for crisis and why others don't. So go and check it out. We put a lot of work into that video. Maybe it's a little overcooked by some people's standards. I don't know. But either way, I would encourage people to check it out. Now, this is interesting. Now, this might explain why the price of oil is so low in spite of everything that's been going on. So if you look here, right now the US continues to hit new highs in terms of its oil output, right around the time that they're about to start another war in the Middle East. Now, the question is, how long can they sustain this? Because most people think that the shale boom peaked right around here, and we're having a second little, you know, windfall at this point, but that's not going to last. And they're trying to crank out as much as they can right now to offset OPEC, because right now the US is in a war with OPEC, and you know, that's probably why we are seeing prices being suppressed in the way that they are. This is not going to last that much longer. I believe that oil is going to be one of the most precious commodities from this point forward. And I would say that it's, let me not say that it's going to be a good investment, because I'm not going to say that, but it's something that I personally would be considering. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Keep on prepping. Canadian Prepper out.